Alright, let's get started. So, any questions about anything so far? Anything we did? Any of the assignments?
I wasn't here last week. Do I just look at the notes?
Yeah, look at the notes. Last week was week 5. Week 5 we talked about lists, strings, random numbers. And I have the notes, I have the video from last time. I also have the one from the summer if you want to look at it. And there's some hints for the assignments also.
Okay.
So go through those, see if it makes sense, and if you have any questions, let me know. So what we're gonna do this week is functions, and that's one of the big pieces for this class. Functions are also known as modules, procedures, methods, many names for them, but basically same thing. And let's see how that works. Hey, so suppose I had some code, right? I had some stars, all right? This is my code, right? And I'm just going with something simple, right? So I have 4 lines of some kind of a code. Could be different things. And then later on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using the same 4 lines of code somewhere down the line in my code. So as you know, when I run this thing, it's going to show you a bunch of stars. And my goal is to find a way to have a way to recycle this code without having to type the same lines over and over every time I want to show this particular 4 lines of stars. So what I can do is I'm going to go in there. I am going to take all these lines for now. Alright. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create something called a function, df, I'll call it stars. And in the stars, I'm going to grab this and I'm going to paste it. I'm going to make sure that it's indented. Everything needs to be indented with the same number of spaces from the left. I like to use the tab. You don't have to, but you have to keep it consistent. You can indent everything with just a single space. That's fine too. I just kind of like the tab a little better. Okay, so the most important thing is make sure that everything is lined up perfectly. If you have something like this, that's not going to work. If you have something like this, that's not going to work. Everything needs to be lined up perfect. Okay, this kind of stuff is not going to work. So perfect indentation. So this is my function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that so this is my function name is stars. And by the way, functions are, it's basically like a variable name that has parentheses after it, right? And you have been using functions throughout the classes that we've done so far. Print is a function, right? So print is, the default print is this, right? So that's a function. And you're going to understand some of these error messages that you might have got. Input is also a function. Remember how we have input? That's a function. Remember how we had a range? Like we had loops for I in range. Range is also a function. When we did the random numbers, from random import rand int, and then you say random num is equal to rand int, some number from like say 1 to 10. That's a function. Okay, so functions are basically words with parentheses after them. Okay, so this particular function's name is stars. The function return returns nothing, and the function parameters are none. Right? There's no parameters. What are the parameters? Parameters are the variables that we were going to put inside the parentheses, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So this is my function stars, which prints 4 stars at a time. So instead of doing these lines of code twice, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go stars, stars. So this here, so this is my function definition. Right? This is the beginning of function body, and this is the end of my function body. All right, what's the function body? Well, everything that's inside the function, everything that's indented in the function, that's the function body. Okay, so as soon as I do this, this is called calling or call the function stars, right? So as soon as I call the function here, what the program is going to do is it's going to jump back up to my function definition and it's going to execute everything inside of the function body. So as soon as I call stars above, the program jumps to the function definition and executes everything inside of the function body, right? So I call it, we go up there, we execute everything. As soon as it's done, when we get to the end of the function body, we return back to where we were called. The program resumes down, gets to another function call. As soon as it gets to this function call, it goes back up to the definition and executes everything in the function body. And I can call the function as many times as I want to, right? Call it another time if I want to, right? So these are all function calls. Okay? And if I run this, you're going to see more stars now. Make sense? Any questions? Pretty basic. Okay, so function definition, function call, the function, how the program works, how it jumps to the definition and executes everything in it. That's the main thing for now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a function. This time I'm just going to copy this whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to have a function I'll call it show num. Okay, so what's the function name here? Show num. Okay, the function is not going to return anything, and the function parameter is going to be some number. I'll call it num. Okay, so the parameter is num. Okay, how is this going to work? Well, I'm going to say print num equals num. Okay, so then I'm going to call my function like so, show num. But now that I have something in there, a variable, unlike this one here where I didn't put anything, I have to put something, right? So if I don't put anything, let's see how it happens, right? So I don't put anything in the parentheses, even though there is something in the parentheses, right? Run it. And show num missing one required positional argument num. Okay, so what's an argument? Argument is this. Okay, so this here is my function argument. Okay, I'll just call it argument. So you need to know the terminology, otherwise you're not going to understand what these error messages mean. You're not going to be able to troubleshoot your programs. So this is my argument. And again, what is the name for this thing here? This here is my parameter. Okay, so now what happens when you call show num with the argument of 10 is you are passing the value 10 into the function, right? And the function argument or parameter becomes equal to the argument. In other words, num is equal to 10, right? So when I say 10 here, this thing here becomes equal to 10, and then I'm going to show you the value 10. Okay, so I go in there. If I run this thing, there's your number 10. Okay, I can go in there and I can call my function with something else. Show num 100. Run it. And now it's 100. Okay, so again, I call the function. As soon as I call it, I'm sending a value of 100 into the function. This is called my argument. All right, again, this is the argument. And as soon as I call show num with 100, num becomes equal to 100. okay? And num is the parameter. Parameter num equals 100, okay? The argument does not have to be a value that you're typing in, or it could actually be a variable. So let's say I'm going to call this a is equal to 99, and I'm going to say show num a. Right? If I run this thing, you're going to see a 99. Okay? And what is the a? A is the argument. Right? Argument. Okay? A is the argument. So when I'm saying show num a, I'm not actually sending the variable a itself. Okay? I'm sending the value of a. Okay? So when I call show num a, I am sending the value of a, not the variable itself. Which means that if I go in there and I try to change a or something, a is equal to 100, right? This is not going to affect this variable a. This variable a here, in fact, let me show you. So I'm going to do print a equals a, and I'm going to do the same thing after it. Okay, so I'm going to run this thing. Right, so you see the a is 99 here, right? I'm showing it, it's 99 here. That's the first one. Then I go and I call my function. When I call the function, I go in there, I execute this little print num 99. That's this, right? Num is 99 because I'm sending over the value of a, right? I'm basically sending 99 here. As soon as I send the 99, this is equal to 99. I show you the 99 here, which is this. Then I change a is equal to 100, and then I show you the a after. So I change this. This is the end of the function. Then we return back to where I was called, which is this, right after it. I go down, I continue to the next print, and the next print shows you that a is still 99. So this change of a here did not affect a here. Why is that? Because this a here, this a is a local variable. Okay, and what does it mean to have a local variable? Local variable is defined inside of a function. Could also be actually defined inside of an if or a loop, right? So if you define something inside of in an indented part of your program, it will belong to only that segment of code. So I have defined a to be a variable for this function, show num, and I have another variable a here, but these two variables are different, right? So I can only use a inside this function. Okay, so changing a here does not change a here. I'll mark it, let's say, with something. So this is my a, this one, right? Does not change this a. Okay, these two are two different variables. These are two different variables. Changing one does not change the other. Okay, so now you know what a local variable is. This is a local variable. It's defined inside of my function, which means that I can change this thing inside of the function, but it's not going to be applicable anywhere outside. Okay, another example, let's say I have a variable b is equal to 0, okay, or 78. Okay, let me try to work with b outside. So print b equals b. Try it. And name b is not defined, right? Why is it not defined? Because we're outside of the function, right? This is a local variable, right? Can only be used, seen, changed here or in this function, right? If I try to do this here, that's no good, right? The below is an error. because b is local to the function show num. Okay, that makes sense? So now you know what a local variable is. And a couple of examples with that. Let me run this thing, make sure it works, so we can go on with the next. Okay?
Alex,
Yeah.
I have a question. So if B is local, it cannot be shown, why A can be shown?
Because A is defined here. So the question is, how come?
So if you define B there, you can also show.
Yes. So the question was, how come I could do this, but I can't do this? And the answer is because I defined A here, which is why I get to use it here, but I have not defined B anywhere outside of my show num function, so I can only use the B here. Okay, so both the local variables, just showing you that even if you have something with the same name that's somewhere else, if you change this thing here, it's not going to change the other one. Okay. All right. So that is that. And then the next thing. So far, what did we learn? What's a function name? How you define a function? How you need to indent everything in it? How the functions get called? How they get, everything in the body gets executed. You also learned what is a parameter, right? Which is the variable in between the parentheses of a function. Okay, so that's that. You also know what an argument is. The argument is the value that we're sending into the function, right? The value that we send into the function, right? Also known as pass into the function, right? You can call the function with whatever arguments you want. You can call the function with the variable itself, okay? But you're still sending the value of A. It's the argument, right? We're sending the value of A. And now I'm going to show you another kind of a function. Excuse me. Another function is a function that is going to return a value. So df return value, right? No parameters. So I'm going to copy these things here, so I don't have to write them again. All right, so what's my function name? Return value. What are the function parameters? None, no parameters. What is the function going to return? I don't know. Returns an integer. Okay, so in here I'm going to say, well, let's call it, instead of return value, I'll call it return 1. Okay, so in here I'm going to return 1, just like that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in there and I'm going to try to call my function return 1, right? And again, this is my definition, function definition. This is my function call. All right, so let's see if it shows me, well, 100. Well, I'll leave it as 1. Okay, so I call the function, I run the program, and I don't see a 1. Why is that? So what happens is, as soon as I call the function, right, I go to my function definition just like before, and as soon as I hit the return, right, as soon as we get to the return, we exit the function and bring back the value 1 where the function was called. In other words, I call the function, I go to the definition, I immediately hit a return 1, and I get the value 1 and I bring it back where the call is. Okay, why are you not seeing the 1? Because I didn't put it inside of a print. So this is my function call, right? Brings back the value 1 here. Okay, but won't show anything. Okay, why? Because if you want to show the value, you must call the return function from inside print. So I can do print return 1, right? So now what's going to happen? I'm calling my function inside here. I'm going to go to my definition. I'm going to get the return. As soon as I get to the return, I exit the function and I bring back the value 1 right here, just like I would do it right here. Okay? The first one is not going to show, but this one is going to show you the 1. So I run it. In fact, let me put a little label here. I'm going to get this. Returns. All right, so there you go. The value of 1 gets inserted here. Any questions?
So this is considered as global, it's not what you just defined right now, it's not local, isn't it not?
What did I have defined?
Oh.
Which one?
You just like return 1 right there.
Yeah, there's no I did not declare. I did not define a variable at all. So there's nothing global. Yeah, there's no local. There's no global. Nothing. There's no variable at all at this point. Okay, I'll make some variables so you see. So.
So what is this return for?
Well, I'll give you some examples. So this is basically just, you understand how this works so far? Okay, so here's some applications. Maybe you want to. You already know how to work with a list, right? Okay. Well, actually, let's just start with something simpler. So I'm going to grab this. And this time I'm going to have a function called add two numbers. Okay, that's the name of my function. The function is going to return the sum of two numbers. Okay, the function parameters are going to be two numbers, maybe num1 and num2, right? Two integers or whatever, two numbers. Okay, in here I'm going to put num1, num2, okay, and inside here I'm going to say something like, all right, total is equal to num1 plus num2, and then I'm going to say return total. Okay, then I can go in there and I can do something like a is equal to int input enter first value, right? Then I'm going to have another one, b enter second value, and then in here I'm going to say print a plus b equals, and then I call the function add two numbers a, b, right? I run it, enter first value 2, second value 3, 2 plus 3 is 5. Okay, so there's all kinds of things that the function can do. You just send in some values, some arguments into the function is going to do some magic, and then maybe it's going to return some result or not.
So do you invent the names?
Yes, I make up the names for the functions. Yeah.
So you can always make a whatever name.
You can pick whatever name you want. Just don't pick names that are for things that we're going to be using, right? So if I go in there and I pick the name print, let's say for example I was using, let's say if I wanted to change the name of my like, let's say I defined the function print, right? So if I say df print, and then in here I do, I don't know, print again. Well, that's going to be a problem. I'm going to do just, I don't know, 1, or total is equal to 1 plus 1. That's it, nothing else, right? And then I'm going to go in there, I'm going to do print. I'm calling my function. Okay, well, as soon as I have defined my own function name print, now I'm going to lose the meaning for the Python function print. So this is not going to work anymore, right? If I try to run this, now it's going to give me an error. Look what it says. Print takes 0 positional arguments, but 1 was given. 0 positional arguments, what does that mean? There are no parameters in here, which means it requires, but 1 was given? Oh yeah, so right here. Right here I'm giving it one argument. What is that argument? Well, it's one string, right? And it's actually expecting, the error that I'm getting is not here. The error that I'm getting is actually, when I call this and I jump into the function, I call print, but I already redefined what print is supposed to look like. Print is not supposed to have any arguments. I'm giving it one argument, right? And that's what it's telling me. Print is supposed to take 0 arguments, but 1 was given. So again, you have to understand the terminology, otherwise you can't figure out what the program is telling you. You can't fix it. Okay, so don't, as far as function names, don't use any reserved words that you plan on using. Okay, there's some words that you're not going to get to use in this class, like sum. Sum is actually a built-in function into Python, just like print, but I don't let you use it because I want you to write your own sums. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so we have a function that takes 2 numbers. All right, so there's another way to do this. So I can show it this way. And by the way, I could have called this function another way here. I can say return value is equal to return 1, right? As soon as I call the function return 1, right, we're going to go in there, we're going to get a return, we're going to bring the 1 right here, and now this variable is going to be equal to that. And then if I wanted to, I can throw that variable right here. Return value equals this, right? So that's one way to do it. So this is calling a function that returns a value. Okay, you either get the value, you either put the value in some kind of a variable so that you can use it, or show your function call from inside of a print. You might have to do that. Okay, and then same thing for this one here. So I can do it this way, or I can do total is equal to this, and then I'm going to do this one, and I'm going to use total in there. And I'm going to make it a capital T so that you don't think it's the same one as this one here. Okay? Not that it makes a difference. Okay? 10, 20, and there you go. Same thing. So this is how you call a function, or how you call different functions that return values. You either make a variable equal to your function call, or you put the function call inside of a print. There's no other way for you to see the thing. Okay? All right. So those are the main things that I want you to know. What are parameters? What are arguments? In this particular case, what are my arguments? These two. All right? This and this are my arguments. All right? In this case, right here, these two are my arguments. This and this are my arguments. And again, this is my function call. All right? Make sense? Okay, so this one here is calling a function from inside print. Okay. All right. So what else do I want to show you? Scope, right? And again, just a quick review. What is the scope? What is the scope of this variable? I didn't tell you what a scope is, did I? So the scope of variable b refers to where b can be used, right? So where can we use b? Only inside of the show num function. Okay, so variable b can only be used inside of the function show num, and that means that the scope of b is the function show num. Okay? So now you know what a scope is also. So these are all important terms. Gotta know them. If you don't know them, you're in trouble. Okay? Especially if you're going to be doing computer science. Alright, so this is that. Let me just go through these links here, see what I have. Yeah, so there's some examples with functions that I did in there. That's one. Basic function parameters and arguments. I have some examples in there too, similar to the one I did. Functions, calling functions. I haven't done that yet. Okay, so in a lot of the other programming languages, the program starts at a function called main, right? If you take Java, there's a public static void main. That's what it's called, right? Long name. If you take C++, it's int main, right? If you take Python, there's no main. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make our own main, just because we can, right? So in another language, you would have a function called main, right? And this is where the whole program is going to begin, right? Not in Python. In Python main is just some function that I made up. I could call it monster if I want to. It doesn't matter. Okay? So inside of this function, let's say I'm going to define another function. df hello. Right? And then what I'm doing here is I'm doing example of one function calling another function. Okay? So this is my hello. The hello is going to do print hello. Okay? And inside my main, I'm going to call my hello. Hello. Okay? Now if I run this thing, what am I going to get? Let's see if I get the hello. And I got to enter some stuff again. Okay, I didn't get a hello. Why is that?
You didn't put the function in print?
I didn't put which function in the print?
The hello.
Well, the hello has a print. So
Did you define it?
if I call hello here, I get the hello, but if I call it from the main, I don't get a hello. So what's up with that?
You didn't have argument.
Huh?
You didn't have an argument in there, right?
I didn't have a what? Argument? I don't need an argument. I didn't say any argument. This function has no parameters. This function has no parameters. I don't need an argument.
You don't have a print.
We have to def, is that the reason, right?
Mm-mm.
No.
So main calls hello, but do I call the main? The main is never called, so it never happens. Okay, so what do I need to do? I have to call it, right? I'm going to go in there, I'm going to do main. I'm calling the main. So as soon as I call main, we go to the function definition above, right? And then so I call it here, we jump to the definition, then we encounter a hello, then we jump to the definition on top, and then we're going to get to see the print. Okay, so I never got the whole thing going. There's your hello. Okay? Yeah, so this is functions of one function calling another function. But the order in which these functions are defined matters. All right? So if I go and I grab this function and I put it here, now watch what happens. Still showed it. Damn it. Okay. It's actually surprising. Print hello. Yeah, I guess the function that. Wow. Normally, what happens is the functions have to be defined before they were called. Otherwise, you get an error message. I am very surprised that this worked. Okay. There you go. Surprise again. I don't know if they fixed it or what happened, but yeah, normally try to define your functions before you use them. Okay, otherwise you're gonna get some errors, maybe. Okay, I expected an error, but I didn't get it. So that's it. So one function calling another function, and you can have multiple functions calling each other. You can have one function calls another, that function calls something else. Okay, so the idea of this functions and modular decomposition is that if you're going to work on some huge project or a big enough project, you're not going to do the whole thing by yourself, right? You're going to get the project, whoever's leading the project is going to decide how we're going to split this, or if you're a team, you're going to say, all right, I want to work on this, or someone else wants to work on this. And each of us is going to grab a piece of the problem, and we're going to solve that individual piece. Each individual piece is going to be solved in some kind of a function or series of functions. Okay, so you're not going to solve the whole problem of the car driving itself in one sitting. You split it in pieces. One person is going to be handling the sensors or whatever, the sonar. So once you're done with your piece, you have a function which is fully tested. Then you bring it. I have worked on my piece, which maybe deals with, I don't know, collision detection or something. We put the two pieces together, and then we start testing. So then, after our two pieces together are put together, we get everybody else's pieces. We keep testing. We keep integrating and integrating and integrating, and then we finally get the thing working. Okay, so that's the software development life cycle, if you will. Okay, and a lot of times you got to go back to the customer because the customer wants something else that you didn't implement. Maybe you show them the product and all those different things, and then you go back to the beginning of the design phase and work on your different modules or procedures or functions or methods. Same thing. Okay, so whenever you hear, all right, function, whenever you see here module, whatever you see procedure, whatever you see method, even think of a function. Okay, that's basically it. Actually, method is a function inside of a class, but it's still a function. So this is functions calling, variable scopes. I covered that. All right. Okay. So I already told you that these variables that are defined inside of my functions are local variables. Right? So this is A is a local variable, B is a local variable. What about num? Is num a local variable? Are parameters local variable? Yes? Yeah. The function is, the variable is defined for this function. It is between the parentheses, so that's a little confusing maybe, but it's still part of this function, right? So this variable num, if I try to do this, where was I trying to do it? Let's do it here. Print num equals num. Oops, num is not defined. It is defined, it's just not defined outside of the function, right? So this one is bad because num, or parameter num, is defined for show num function only, and num can only be used inside of show num function because num is a local variable whose scope is the show num function only. Okay, so there's your terminology again. Okay, so local variable, scope, and what that means and how it can be used. So this was giving you this error. Okay, so that's the problem. All right, so let's see what else I want to tell you. So there's a few assignments in here, And I guess I'll go through them and give you some hints. Okay, so write a function sum double which given two integer parameters returns their sum unless the two values are the same, then the function shows their doubled sum. Right? So if you have, this is your function definition, and I show you how to call it. Right? This is my function, takes two different values. If they're two different values, you just add them up and return their sum. Again, two different values, you add them up, return their sum. But if there are two values that are the same, then you return twice the sum. All right? Same thing here. All right? So let me give you an example. So this is your hints now. Let me just jump to this. So this is your P28 hint. All right? So suppose I want to do this. I want to return the sum of two numbers if they are positive, if they're negative, and twice the sum if they are positive. Okay, so df P28, right? We have a num1, num2. Okay, I gotta check if the numbers are negative. So if num1, if let's say if they are both negative, right? And otherwise show. So this one is going to return the sum for two numbers if they're both negative. And otherwise, we're going to show the sum if they're positive. Okay, so if my number 1 is less than 0 and my number 2 is less than 0, they're both negative, right? Both negative. I'm going to return num1 plus num2, right? I'm returning. Otherwise, else, I guess, you don't even need the else. Okay? In fact, before I get to this, let me just jump back up for just a second. So let's say it won't even let you work. So let's do this. Yeah, in here, see if that works. No, let's go all the way back to that first one that had a return. The return 1, right? If I do print hi here, see if it even takes it. Yeah, it takes it. Okay, so if I do a return hi here, notice how when I call my function, I call it a couple of times here, right? And I get to see this stuff, but I never get to see this. Why is that? Because I'm highlighting the y. As soon as we get to the return, we exit the function. All right, so as soon as you hit a return inside of a function, you're out. So this will never show. All right, will never show because it is after the return statement. Okay, so if you ever hit a return in a function, it's the same as when you hit a break in a loop. Right? If you hit a break in the loop, what happens? You're out of that loop. It doesn't do anything after the break. Same thing when if you happen to have something after the print, wonderful. But I mean, after the return, that's great. But you're not going to be able to see or do whatever any of these statements that are after the returns. Okay. So if I get to this, if both are negatives, I'm going to hit the return and I'm out. Right? But if they're not, I don't even have to do an else. I'm just going to do another return because if this is true, we're out. We're not even going to do anything after it. But otherwise, I'm going to return, not return. This time I'm going to show something. So this one is otherwise show the sum. Wait, they're return the sum of them if they're both negative. Otherwise, show the sum if they're positive. Okay, so otherwise, I'm going to do print. Let's just do a sum total is equal to num1 plus num2, and I'm going to do print total. Okay, and how am I going to call my function? Well, I'm going to have to test it a couple of ways. So first, I have to test it for when they're both negative. All right, so and if it's returning a value, so call the function so that it returns a value. I'm going to do print, and then I'm going to do p28, and then I'm going to give it a -1, right? And if that works, then it should show me -1 plus -1, which is a -2, right? Now, if I wanted to call the function that shows the value, call the function so that it shows a value. That will be the second case, right? So if they're not both negative, we're going to add them up and we're going to show it from there, right? So now we're going to go in there and we're going to do print p28, and I'm going to give it like a 1 and a 1. All right, that will be one test. All right, that will be a 2. And what I'm going to do is, so in this case, they're both negative. I call the function. I'll go in there. This is true. I return the value. We bring back the value right inside of my print. In this particular case, I don't need the print. Okay, I have two values that are not both negative. So this is not true. So that means total is equal to 1 plus 1. And then I'm going to show you print total from here. So I don't need a print here if the function shows a value. Okay, so hopefully it works. Keep your fingers crossed. And there you go. So this -2 is the first one, right? That's this. And the 2 is the other one. Okay, and then of course you want to test it with a couple of different ways. You know, this is if they're both positive, then you would want to do it. One is negative, maybe one is negative here, right? And see what that gives you. Okay, a couple of zeros, which is what you want. Okay, so this is show versus return. Show versus return. So make sure you know this stuff because I will have this kind of stuff on the midterm. So this is 28, 29. Write the definition and test the function absolute num, right? So what does this do? Well, if any value that is being typed is, and I have some examples in there. So underneath it, I'll show you. So what's an absolute value? Well, always the positive, right? If you have a -1, the absolute value of that is 1. If you have a +1, the absolute value of that is 1, right? So you just make the positive. Okay, so what are you going to do? You have to create a function. Inside of that function, and first of all, this is a function that takes a parameter. Okay, so you're going to determine if this number is less than 0, right? If that number is less than 0, then you just multiply it by -1. Otherwise, you just show it as is. Okay, and the function returns a value. Does that make sense? Anyone want hints on this? We good? Positive? I'll take your word for it. So that's 29. 29, right? There's a bit of a hint in it, so hopefully that'll get you started. Okay, write a function named IsDivisible that takes two integers n and m and returns. There's an even there. Okay, so let's do this. I have the hint underneath the actual assignment. So this function, the name of the function is divisible. This is how you're going to call it, right? You're going to send it two different numbers, and if the first number is divisible by the second number, you return true. Otherwise, you return false, right? So here's an example of P30, I guess. Give you a little something. P30. hint, right? Return true, false. So let's say you have a DFP30 and I have some kind of a number and I'm going to return true. Let's call it is positive. Is positive, right? So return true if the number is positive and then false otherwise. So I go in there and I say if my number is less than 0, then or greater than 0, then this is going to be return true. And otherwise, I can say else, return false. But since if this is true, then I'm going to hit the return true. Then I can just say else, which is basically if this isn't true, then you're going to automatically get to this one and return false. Okay, and you can call the function in there. A couple of tests. Print is pos -1, so that should be a false, and then print is pos 1, and this should be a true. All right, so this should be false, this should be true, and always test these things, make sure it works. All right, false, true, that's what I wanted. Okay, so what do you have to do for this one? Well, you're going to have a similar thing. You're going to have to check if one number, if the first argument, right, if your first argument n is divisible by the second argument, right? So this is my argument, this is my argument. Respectively, you're going to have a couple of parameters, right? So you're going to have is divisible, what is it? Which one's the first one? N and M and M, right? And then you just check to see if n modulus M is equal to 0, that is it's divisible, then you're going to return true. Okay? That's pretty much all there is. Plus a little bit more. Any questions? We're good? Okay. So this is 30. We're going to do 31. 31 is not hard at all. It's just pretty much testing your understanding of the terminology. Write a definition of a function called multadd. The multadd takes 3 float parameters and returns a times b plus c. Oh, but call it from the main. Okay? So I guess this example here that I have with the main, wherever that was. All right, this is your P31 hint. Okay? So all you got to do is you got to call one function from the main. This is an example of how to call that function from the main. And if you know what parameters are and what return means, which you should by now, then it should be a pretty straightforward thing. Okay? Yeah, I guess I have an example in there also so that you know how one function can call another function. Okay? Any questions on this stuff? Still good?
Any restrictions as far as functions goes? You know, like else, like if else, you know, else if it has to go in a certain order. This is no restriction. Right?
The rules that we have learned so far about how you're supposed to use if and else's applies the same way. No change for functions also. Yeah, nothing different. So just treat it like piece of code, right? 31, 32 asks you to have a triangle or check to see if a shape is a triangle. So if you're given 3 sticks, you may or may not be able to arrange them to make a triangle. And the way you test this is if any of the 3 sticks is greater than the sum of the other 2, then you cannot form a triangle. Right? So what you're going to do is you're going to write a function is triangle that takes 3 sides A, B, C as arguments and returns either true or false depending on whether you can form a triangle from that or not. All right? So just a little hint. So I know maybe you want it. 32 P32 hint. All right? Let's say you have an is df is triangle takes three sides, A, B, C. And what I'm saying is, if A, how's it go? If any of the three sticks is greater than the sum of the other two, okay. If A is greater than B plus C, then you return false, right? You gotta do the same for the other ones, okay? And of course you have to test it. Test the above function using 3 calls, right? Just like with all the other ifs that we've been doing. If you have multiple conditions, if the program can go multiple ways, test every one of them, okay? So A is greater than B plus C, B is greater than A plus C, C is greater than A plus B, tested all of them, okay? So you would have this, and then you have another return false, and then another return false, right? So 2 more, well, this got to be an if, right? If that, okay? 2 more ifs, or else ifs, and at the end you can just do return false, return true, right? So if it's not either of these 3 false ones, then it's automatically a true, okay? So that's 32. 33. All right, 33 is similar to your other one, and by other one I mean, which one was it? The one that was the divisible numbers, this one right here, right? For is divisible, it's basically the same thing, right? So is divisible checks to see if n modulus m is equal to 0, right? And I guess I'll give you a hint in there too. So P, this is P33 hint also, right? You're going to return true, false, and what we're going to do is you have, what is it? Is even. This even takes just a single number, n, right? And then if n modulus 2 is equal to 0, that makes it an even number, then you return true. And then of course false otherwise. Okay? Any questions? Still awake? I don't hear any snoring, so I'll take that as yes. Okay, 33, and that's it. So 6 assignments for this week, not very complicated, pretty easy actually. Okay, are we good? Any questions about anything? All right, so that's all there is for today. If you need help, come see me in the office hours, send me your emails, you know the drill.